My husband slammed his hand on the dinner table and shouted, "Say sorry to my sister or leave my house." Everyone froze. His mother stared at me with disgust, while his sister cried like I had just broken her heart. They expected me to apologize, like I had done countless times before. Instead, I slowly stood up, walked toward his sister, and looked directly into her eyes. Then I said 7 words that instantly wiped the tears from her face. My husband went pale, because those 7 words exposed a secret they never expected me to discover, and by midnight, everything would change forever. The words "say sorry to my sister" or "leave my house" should never have been spoken by the man who promised, 7 years earlier, that our home would always be ours. But that was exactly what Daniel said that night, with both hands planted on the dinner table and his entire family watching me. For a few seconds, I thought I had misunderstood him. His mother, Margaret, sat beside him, lips pressed into a thin line. His father stared at his plate. Across from me sat Daniel's younger sister, Rachel, wiping tears from her cheeks. Rachel looked broken. I knew she wasn't. That was the problem. I had spent years convincing myself that Rachel's behavior wasn't worth fighting about. When she borrowed money and forgot to return it, I let it go. When she criticized my clothes or cooking, I laughed it off. Once, she told me Daniel deserved someone less controlling. I pretended I hadn't heard, because Rachel was Daniel's little sister, and Daniel had always protected her. He called it loyalty. I called it exhausting. Daniel and I had met at a friend's barbecue when I was 31. He was funny, thoughtful, and different from the men I'd dated before him. He listened, remembered little things, and made me feel safe. We married 2 years later. Our life wasn't perfect, but it was comfortable. We owned a modest house, shared the bills, cooked together, and built a routine that felt ordinary until something threatened it. Rachel never seemed to like that routine. She visited without calling first and had opinions about everything. If Daniel and I disagreed, she somehow heard about it and made me feel like I was the unreasonable one. Then 3 months earlier, something changed. Rachel started showing up at our house more often. Sometimes she arrived while Daniel was still at work and asked to wait for him. Sometimes she sat in our living room and asked personal questions about our marriage. "Does Daniel still talk to you about everything?" she asked me one afternoon. I remember laughing. "Why wouldn't he?" She shrugged. "Just wondering." At the time, I thought it was jealousy. I didn't realize it was a warning. The argument that brought us to that dinner started 2 weeks earlier. Rachel accused me of embarrassing her at a family gathering because I corrected something she said about my job. It was harmless. Everyone else moved on. Rachel hadn't. She told Daniel I had deliberately humiliated her. I explained what really happened. He told me I should apologize anyway. "For peace," he said. I refused, because I was tired of apologizing for things I hadn't done. That evening, Rachel brought it up again. She started crying before she'd even finished her first sentence. "I can't believe she treats me like this," she said. Daniel immediately reached for her hand. That gesture told me how this dinner was going to end. He looked at me. "Just apologize, Emma." I stared at him. For what? For hurting her. I didn't hurt her. Rachel covered her face. Margaret sighed. Daniel's jaw tightened. Then he said it. "Say sorry to my sister, or leave my house." The room went silent. I looked around the table. Nobody defended me. Nobody asked what had actually happened. They had already decided who the villain was. And for the first time in 7 years, I stopped trying to convince them otherwise. I pushed my chair back slowly. Daniel looked almost relieved, as if he expected me to storm out. But I didn't. I stood. Then I walked around the table toward Rachel. She lowered her hands. Her eyes met mine. And suddenly, the confident little smile she'd been hiding behind her tears disappeared. Because there was something she didn't know. 3 days earlier, I had found a message on Daniel's phone that wasn't meant for me. I hadn't planned to investigate or expose anyone, but I had saved it. And after what Daniel had just said, I realized there was no reason to protect the people who had never protected me. I stopped beside Rachel. She looked up at me. I breathed. Then I said the one sentence that changed everything. "Rachel," I said quietly, I'll apologize the day you tell your husband why you were meeting mine in secret. The room stopped breathing. Rachel froze. Daniel stared at me. What are you talking about? You heard me. Rachel immediately shook her head. Emma, you're confused. I don't know what you think you saw, but I didn't say I saw anything. Her face changed, just slightly, but Daniel noticed. Rachel, this is ridiculous, she said. She's trying to destroy me because she refuses to admit she was wrong. I almost laughed. Not because anything was funny, because that was how Rachel always survived.
She cried.
She changed the subject. She made herself the victim. And somebody else apologized. Except this time, I had proof. 3 nights earlier, Daniel's phone had buzzed while he was in the kitchen. The screen lit up. I wasn't snooping. I glanced down because I thought it might be important. A message from Rachel appeared. You can't keep doing this. She is starting to notice. I stared at it. Then another message appeared. Tell me when she's gone. My stomach tightened. When Daniel returned, he grabbed his phone. Who was that? I asked. Rachel. Why does she want to know when I'm gone? He smiled. Probably something about Mom. You know how complicated things have been. It was a terrible explanation, but I accepted it. At least I pretended to. The next morning, I checked our shared calendar. Daniel had several unexplained appointments. Coffee meetings, late lunches, quick errands, places I'd never heard of. Then I remembered something Rachel had casually told me weeks earlier. Daniel and I have been talking a lot lately. I hadn't thought much about it. Now I couldn't stop thinking about it. I waited. 2 days later, another message appeared while Daniel was showering. Your wife cannot know about the money. Money? What money? I didn't touch his phone. I didn't need to. That evening, I asked him whether he'd given Rachel money. He hesitated, then admitted he'd loaned her $8,000. I asked why he hadn't told me. He said he didn't want another family argument. I wanted to believe him, but something felt wrong. So I checked our bank statements. The money hadn't gone directly to Rachel. It had gone into another account, and that account had been receiving regular payments from Rachel. I couldn't understand it. Then an email arrived in my inbox by mistake. It was from Rachel. Attached was a screenshot of a conversation with her husband, Michael. I read it. Rachel had been telling Michael that Daniel was unhappy, that I controlled him, and that she was worried about our marriage. Then I saw one sentence that made my hands go cold. If Emma leaves him, Daniel will finally understand who has always been there for him. I read it again. Rachel wasn't protecting her brother. She was trying to come between us.
But why?
I kept digging. That's when I discovered the money wasn't a loan to help Rachel. Rachel had been encouraging Daniel to invest in a small business. The business belonged to Michael, her husband. Daniel had already transferred nearly $20,000. Suddenly, the strange messages made sense. Rachel wasn't simply creating family drama. She was manipulating people and moving money between marriages while making everyone suspicious of each other. I saved the messages and bank records, not because I wanted revenge, because I knew that if I confronted her without evidence, she'd turn everything around on me. And that's exactly what happened at dinner. Rachel stood. You're lying. I looked at her.
No.
But I haven't told him everything yet. Daniel's face went pale. What else is there? I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. Enough to explain why you weren't the only person she was lying to. Rachel stopped crying. Then the front door opened. Michael walked inside. He looked directly at Rachel. Then at Daniel. Tell me, he said quietly, how long have you two been hiding this from me? Nobody answered. Rachel looked at Daniel, but he couldn't meet her anymore. And for the first time that night, Rachel had nowhere left to hide. Michael's question hung over the room. How long have you two been hiding this from me? Rachel looked at Daniel.
Daniel looked at me.
Nobody spoke. Then Michael said, Rachel, answer me. I can explain, she whispered. You've been telling me Emma was ruining your brother's marriage. You said Daniel was miserable. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. I was trying to protect my family. I shook my head.
No.
You were controlling it.
Daniel turned toward me.
Emma, please. We can talk privately. Privately? I remembered his ultimatum. Say sorry to my sister, or leave my house. He had made his choice. I unlocked my phone and placed it on the table. I have the messages, bank records, and meeting dates. Daniel stared at the screen. Rachel's face went pale. Michael picked up the phone. He read it, then looked at Rachel. You told me the money was for my medical bills. Rachel said nothing. It wasn't, I said. Michael turned toward Daniel. And you? Daniel swallowed. I thought it was an investment. An investment in what? Daniel didn't answer. I did. Rachel convinced him to put money into your business, without telling you where it came from. Michael's expression hardened. Rachel snapped. I was trying to keep everyone together. By lying to everyone?
She stopped.
Daniel rubbed his forehead. I should have told you, he admitted. I looked at him. That isn't all you should have told me. His eyes dropped. That was when I knew our marriage had changed. Not because Rachel manipulated him, because he allowed her to. He could have told me the truth. Instead, he hid it. Then he stood beside her and demanded that I apologize. Michael left with the records. He told Rachel he needed time to decide whether their marriage could survive. Rachel tried one final time to turn everyone against me.
She has been planning this, she said.
She wants to destroy us. I looked at her.
No.
I'm not destroying anything. I'm refusing to cover for it. Daniel followed me into the hallway. Emma, wait. I stopped. I made a mistake. You made several. I love you. I believed him. That was the hardest part. But love without honesty had become another excuse. I need you to come home with me, he said. I looked around the house. Our wedding picture still stood on the shelf. But suddenly none of it felt like mine. You told me to leave. I was angry. You weren't confused. He looked away. You wanted me to choose between your sister and myself. I chose myself. The next morning, I called an attorney. I didn't empty our accounts or destroy his belongings. I didn't post anything online. I simply protected myself. Within weeks, the financial records were reviewed, Rachel's lies became impossible to maintain, and Michael began separating from her. Another couple also discovered the truth. Their marriage ended soon afterward. 3 marriages had been damaged by the same web of secrets. Mine was the one I never expected to lose. Daniel kept asking for another chance. He apologized and promised therapy repeatedly. Eventually, I met him at a coffee shop. I wish I could take that night back, he said. You can't. I never should have told you to leave. No, I said. You shouldn't have.
He looked at me.
Then what ended us? I thought about it. The ultimatum didn't end our marriage, I said. The lies did. He lowered his eyes. I stood and picked up my bag. Walking away didn't feel like losing. It felt like breathing. 3 marriages had collapsed after the truth came out. But I didn't feel victorious. I felt free. As I stepped outside, I realized something I'd forgotten. I didn't need anyone's permission to choose myself. Daniel had told me to leave his house.
So I did.
I left the house. I left the marriage. And eventually, I left behind the version of myself who believed being loved meant accepting blame for someone else's lies. That night, 3 marriages ended. But for the first time in years, I wasn't the woman being asked to apologize. I was the woman finally walking away with the truth alone.